Just days before the wedding, my girlfriend posted a photo with her ex-boyfriend saying, "Today we say our goodbyes." So I surprised them both. Before we go on, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which city you're tuning in from. Everything was practically ready. The venue booked, the guests confirmed, the payments made. We'd even finished organizing the small details, the ones that usually cause stress in the final days: the music, the food, the seating chart. I was tired but calm. I felt like nothing could go wrong anymore. Lucretia, on the other hand, was more restless than usual. At first, I attributed it to stress. It's common for someone who's about to get married to feel pressure, doubts, anxiety. I never saw it as a red flag. I noticed her distracted, more focused on her phone, less present when we talked, but I didn't give it importance. I thought it was part of the process. 3 days before all this, she told me she was going out with her friends. "They want to throw me a bachelorette party?" She explained. "Something chill, just to hang out." It didn't seem weird to me. In fact, it surprised me that she'd left it so close to the wedding, but I didn't say anything. I asked her where they'd go. She answered vaguely, without going into many details. I didn't insist either. I might want to check up on or question everything. That was the first mistake. The night she went out, I stayed home. I had pending work and preferred to use the time. We talked before she left. She was getting ready. She seemed happy, even excited. There were no clear signs that anything was out of place. She told me not to worry, that she'd probably be late. "Have fun," I replied. "Just be careful." She left around 9. The first few hours passed normally. I didn't think about her more than necessary. I was focused on my stuff. Around 11, I checked my phone out habit. I had an Instagram notification. It was a story posted by Lucretia. I opened it, not expecting anything relevant. That's when everything started to change. It was a photo. Lucretia was sitting at a table with a drink in her hand. She was smiling. Next to her was a man. I didn't have to think hard to recognize him. It was her ex-boyfriend. He wasn't just anyone. I knew who he was. She talked to me about him in the past, although always superficially. According to her, their relationship had ended years ago and there was nothing pending. What caught my attention the most wasn't just that they were together. It was the text accompanying the image. "Today we say our goodbyes." I read that sentence several times. I didn't have enough context to interpret it neutrally. It wasn't a goodbye between just any friends. Not with that tone, not with that person, not 2 weeks before a wedding. I tried not to react immediately. I thought there could be an explanation. Maybe she'd run into him by chance. Maybe someone else had invited him. Maybe the phrase didn't mean what it seemed, but something didn't fit. The way they were sitting, the closeness, the expression on both of their faces, it wasn't awkward or distant. It was familiar. I decided to call her. She didn't answer. I waited a few minutes and dialed again. She didn't answer either. I sent her a short, direct message. "Why are you with him?" Several minutes passed before I saw she was online. She didn't reply immediately. When she finally did, her message was brief. "I'll explain later." That didn't help. I called her again. This time she did answer. Her voice sounded different, not exactly nervous, but tense. "What's wrong?" she said. I didn't beat around the bush. I saw the photo. There was a short silence. "It's not what it looks like," she replied almost immediately. It was a predictable phrase. "Then explain me what it is," I said. I heard background noise, music, voices. It didn't seem like a quiet environment. "It's just a dinner," she said. We ran into each other, started talking, and decided to say a proper goodbye. Nothing more. Goodbye to what? I asked. To everything that was left pending. It didn't make sense. "We're getting married in 2 weeks," I told her. "And you decide to do this now." "I didn't plan it," she replied. "It just happened." That explanation was too simple for something that clearly wasn't. "Are you alone with him?" She hesitated for a second before answering. "Yes, but there's nothing wrong with it. We're just talking." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I tried to keep the conversation as clear as possible. "Lucretia, this isn't normal." I said. "No, right now it isn't." "So you're imagining things," she replied. "I swear it's just a goodbye. I want to close that chapter before marrying you." That sentence left me thinking. Close that chapter. It wasn't something you do in private at night with someone you had a significant relationship with, much less when there's already a formal commitment with someone else. "Come home," I told her. "We'll talk tomorrow." "I can't leave like this," she replied. Just give me a few hours. I didn't insist any further at that moment. The conversation wasn't going to progress. I hung up. For a while, I tried to refocus on what I was doing, but it was no longer possible. The situation wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't an unimportant coincidence. There were decisions behind what was happening. Hours passed. I didn't call her again. She didn't text me either. Around 1 in the morning, I received a message from an unknown number. It had no name or photo, just an attached video. My first thought was that it was spam or something irrelevant. I was about to ignore it, but something made me open it. The video started with an unsteady shot, as if someone were holding the phone carelessly. The image stabilized after a few seconds. I recognized the place immediately. It was a bedroom. It wasn't ours. The camera moved slowly. I'm not going to describe every detail, but the essential was clear. Lucretia was there asleep, in a situation that left no room for innocent interpretations. She didn't seem aware of what was happening at that moment. I felt a punch to the stomach. Before I could fully process it, a voice spoke from behind the camera. It was him. His tone was mocking, confident, as if he knew exactly the effect he was going to cause. "Look," he said, "here's your fiancé." He made a few more comments, all with the same intention: to provoke, to humiliate, to make it clear that what had happened wasn't something minor. I didn't need to hear anymore. I stopped the video. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. There were no doubts about what it meant. There was no explanation that could justify it. I felt anger, yes, but it wasn't an immediate explosive reaction. It was something colder. I took the phone and threw it against the floor. The impact echoed in the room. I stood still, trying to sort out what I'd just seen. The situation was no longer confusing. There were no possible versions. There were no misunderstandings. There was a clear decision on her part, and also a clear intention on his part by sending me that video. It wasn't just about what had happened between them. It was about letting me know, about making sure I saw it, about making it something irreversible. I took several deep breaths. I didn't try to call her. It made no sense at that moment. Any conversation that happened in that state was only going to make things worse or generate impulsive responses. I paced around the house for several minutes. I thought about everything we'd built in the invested years, about the wedding that was about to happen, about the people who were already involved. All of that had become irrelevant in a matter of minutes. I stopped, looked at the phone on the floor, and decided what I was going to do. The next day, the first thing I did was review everything related to the wedding. I didn't do it out of nostalgia or to try to save something. I did it for money and logic. There was too much invested to simply cancel everything without thinking. The venue was the biggest expense. I read the full contract line by line. We were already too close to the date. There was no way to cancel without losing practically everything I'd paid. That made me change my focus. If I couldn't get the money back, at least I could decide how that space was going to be used. That's when the idea came to me. It wasn't a fit of rage. It was something that started as a possibility and slowly became the only option that made sense. I didn't cancel anything else. I left the catering, the decoration, the music, everything exactly as it was. From the outside, the wedding was still on. When Lucretia arrived that early morning, I'd already decided I wasn't going to confront her immediately, not because I didn't have reasons, but because I no longer needed answers. The next day, she was the one who brought up the topic. "I overdid it," she said, avoiding looking at me directly. I listened to her without interrupting. "Nothing happened," she continued. "I know how it looked, but seriously, we just talked. It was something I needed to close before marrying you. I didn't overreact." "Are you sure?" I asked her. "Yes," she replied quickly. "I promise." I looked at her for a few seconds. I didn't mention the video. I gave her no sign that I knew exactly what had happened. At that moment, I understood something. I didn't need her to tell me the truth. I already had it. "Okay," I told her. "I trust you." That sentence calmed her down more than I expected. During the following days, everything continued as if nothing had happened. She went back to behaving normally. She talked about the wedding, about the final details, about the plans afterwards. She even seemed more relaxed, as if that night's events had been left behind. I kept the same pace. I answered, I gave my opinion. I participated in the decisions. From the outside, we were a couple about to get married. But in reality, I was already in another stage. I contacted the venue and confirmed that everything was in order. I asked them to check the projection system. I want to make sure it worked flawlessly. I also verified schedules, accesses, and timing. I left nothing to chance. I didn't give them detailed explanations. I just said I had an important video I wanted to project during the event. They didn't question it much. The day of the wedding arrived. I woke up early without nerves. I didn't feel anxiety or emotion or doubt. I was just clear about what I was going to do. I arrived at the venue before most. I personally verified that everything was ready. The screen, the sound, the lighting, everything had to work at the exact moment. Then I left. I didn't stay to receive guests. I didn't get dressed for the ceremony. It made no sense to do so. I positioned myself at a point from where I could see inside the venue without being exposed. I didn't want interaction. I didn't want conversations. I just wanted to observe. The guests began to arrive. Family, friends, acquaintances, people who came to celebrate something that for me no longer existed. I watched them enter. Greet, take a seat. Everything was unfolding like any normal wedding. Lucretia arrived later, dressed for the occasion. From where I was, I could see her interacting with everyone. She smiled, talked, seemed calm. There were no signs she suspected anything. She tried to communicate with me. I saw her check her phone several times. I assumed she was calling or texting me. I didn't answer. Time started to pass. The ceremony wasn't starting. At first, nobody gave importance. It's normal for there to be delays. But the minutes piled up. People began to murmur. Some stood up. Others asked what was going on. The confusion began to show. Lucretia started to get nervous. I saw her talk to some relatives, move from one place to another, check her phone more insistently. She had no answers. Nobody did. Then, at the moment I decided, everything started. The venue's lights changed slightly. It wasn't something abrupt, but enough for people to pay attention. The screen turned on. At first, many thought it was part of the event. A pre-video, some kind of surprise, something prepared. I knew exactly what was coming. The video started. The first few seconds weren't clear. An unsteady image, a bedroom, a shot that took a while to focus, but it didn't need much time. As soon as the image stabilized, the context became evident. It wasn't necessary to show too much. It was enough for anyone to understand what they were seeing. The venue went silent. An uncomfortable, heavy silence. Some people stopped looking, others stood completely still. Nobody spoke, everyone was processing the same thing. I searched for Lucretia with my gaze. I found her almost immediately. She was looking at the screen. Her expression changed in a matter of seconds. First confusion, then disbelief, then fear. I saw her say no, although I couldn't hear her. She tried to react, but didn't know how. She didn't know where the video had come from, she didn't know who had put it on, and she didn't know I'd seen it days ago. When the voice in the video was heard, there was no longer any doubt. Some people started to get up, others avoided looking directly. The atmosphere became even more tense. Lucretia started to cry. It wasn't immediate, but when it happened, she couldn't stop. She tried to approach the screen. "Turn it off," she yelled. The staff hesitated. They didn't have clear instructions. The video continued a few more seconds before stopping. The silence that remained was worse. Nobody said anything. Some looked at the floor. Others watched her not knowing how to react. I remained in the same place observing. I didn't feel satisfaction. It wasn't a feeling of victory. It was more like a confirmation. Everything I'd thought, everything I'd decided, was justified. The wedding wasn't going to happen. It was never going to happen. Lucretia was left in the center of everything, without control of the situation, without a way to explain it, without an immediate way out. I had nothing else to do there. I didn't need to talk to anyone. I didn't need to face her. It was already over. I turned around and left without making a sound, without saying goodbye, without looking back. For me, everything had ended long before that day. I didn't stay to see more. As soon as the video ended, it made no sense to stay there. I didn't need to see full reactions or hear what people were going to say afterwards. The important part had already happened. I left the place without anyone stopping me. Nobody was looking for me at that moment. All the attention was focused on what had just occurred inside the venue. That was exactly what I'd foreseen. But that wasn't the last thing I did. Before that day, I'd already investigated enough about him. I wasn't interested in his life out of curiosity, but for context. I wanted to know who I was really dealing with. In that process, I found something relevant. He wasn't single. He had a wife. It wasn't hard to confirm the information. Social networks, photos, mutual connections. It was all there. I just had to pay attention. The same day I received the video, I saved a copy. I didn't share it with anyone at that time. I didn't post it. I didn't do anything impulsive. I just saved it. Later, calmly, I found a way to send it to her. I didn't write a long message. I didn't explain anything. I just sent the video. If there was anything to say, the content spoke for itself. I didn't think about it again after sending it. Whatever happened between them or within their relationship was out of my reach and out of my interest. When I left the venue, I already had everything ready to leave the city. It wasn't a last-minute decision. I considered that possibility days before. After what happened, it made no sense to stay in the same environment, surrounded by the same people and the same questions. My job allowed it. I'm a video editor. I don't depend on an office or a specific location. As long as I have a computer and a connection, I can work from anywhere. That made everything simpler. My parents live in another state. I talked to them before the wedding. I didn't tell them every detail, but enough for them to understand what I was going to do. There were no judgments or unnecessary questions. They just accepted the decision. My siblings knew too. That's why they didn't go to the wedding. It wasn't for lack of interest. It was because they already knew the context. It made no sense for them to attend something that was never actually going to happen. After leaving the venue, I didn't return to the house I shared with Lucretia. I'd already taken out my important things days before. The rest stopped having value the moment I made the decision to end everything. I took the car and left the city that same day. The drive was long, but necessary. I arrived at my parents' house late at night. There were no uncomfortable questions. My mother welcomed me as always. My father just nodded when he saw me. He didn't need detailed explanations. He knew something important had happened. That night, I slept more than I had in weeks, without having to think about what I was going to do the next day. The following days were quiet. I resumed work little by little. Organizing my time, editing, focusing on something concrete helped everything settle. I didn't talk to Lucretia. I didn't answer any of her attempts to contact me, because she did try. Calls, messages, even emails. I didn't open most of them. I had nothing to say to her. Any conversation at that point was only going to prolong something that was already closed. A couple of weeks later, someone we knew mutually told me what had happened afterwards. I didn't seek it out. I didn't ask. They simply told me. Her family's reaction wasn't good. They're people with a very strict way of seeing things. For them, what happened wasn't something that could be ignored or justified. When they found out, they rejected her. They didn't go into details. They didn't want explanations. They just distanced themselves. According to what I was told, they kicked her out of the house. I didn't confirm that information directly. I had no interest in doing so either. Every decision has consequences, and those consequences can't always be controlled. I also learned that the situation with her ex got complicated. They didn't give me all the details, but they didn't need to. The fact that his wife received that video was enough to understand the scenario. I didn't feel satisfaction upon hearing that, nor guilt. I simply took it as one more consequence of everything that had happened. Over time, I stopped receiving information. People stopped mentioning the topic, and I stopped thinking about it constantly. There was something else I wanted to do. The honeymoon trip was already paid for. It made no sense to cancel it, so I decided to use it. I only invited my older brother. We always got along well, but we'd never taken a trip like that together. I proposed the idea, and he accepted without hesitation. The destination was Japan. I'd always wanted to visit. It was something I'd postponed for years, waiting for the right moment. In the end, that moment arrived in a way I hadn't planned, but it arrived. The trip was different from what it originally would have been. Simpler, quieter, without external expectations. Just time to be away from everything that had happened. Walking through new places, seeing different things, changing environments, helped more than I expected. It wasn't a way to forget. It was a way to move forward. My brother didn't touch the topic more than necessary. He didn't ask constant questions. He was just there. And that was enough. As the days passed, I started to notice something. I no longer thought about Lucretia. She simply stopped taking up space. I closed that chapter, not with words, not with explanations, but with actions. And for me, that was enough.